Hi, and welcome to today's Mindset podcast. I have the honor of Terry. Welcome to the podcast today. Thank you for spending time with us. Just to give a little bit of background about yourself. What's most exciting for me is you've been the CEO of a zoo for about 25 years. You've broken, I guess in a way, you've cracked the largest, which was the largest fraud history in the US history. So when we talk about that, and you've given away $1 billion in donations. Is that correct?
Well, it's pretty darn close. I started out as a farmer. I grew up on the farm here in the state of Iowa, small state right in the Midwest, and started in cable television. Spent 20 years helping build cable television and starting networks like MTV and CNN and all of those sort of things before they were cool, and worked with some notables like a Ted Turner. But we got cashed out when I was 40 years of age, so I started my own companies. I had four different companies that I started, but the big
Wow.
one was doing television production for HBO and ESPN and all these, the people that I'd worked with when cable was just getting started. But at age 50, I hit that, well, yeah, I guess maybe midlife crisis. And that's when I got a call to say, would you be interested in running the zoo? So for about 5 or 6 years, I helped turn around the zoo, the big zoo in the state, and making it the second largest cultural attraction in the state. And then got a second call from the current governor at that point to say, hey, the lottery director resigned. Would you be interested in running the lottery? And so I did that for 10 years. And that's how I gave away $1 billion. Over those 10 years, I had some big jackpots and just a lot of fun giving away. And that's when, instead of a marketing and promotions guy and an ideas dude, I basically got into fraud and ethics in the end of my career. So today I'm retired, but I've got the best retirement gig in the world, and that's public speaking. I travel all over the world and talk about ethics and internal fraud, and also talk about ways to create an innovative environment and come up with new ideas.
And that speaks perfectly. I mean, the fraud part, I want to get into because it sounds extremely entertaining and interesting, and we'll spend some time on that. And I think for just to give some background, a lot of our users and a lot of the listeners are professionals who, whether they're in the real estate space or another space, are really looking to speakers such as yourself. By the way, your website, terryspeaks.com, and people can learn a lot about you that way as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. TerrySpeaks.com, pretty easy to remember.
Awesome. And of a lot of our listeners are really, listening to these podcasts because they're looking for new innovative ways of either marketing themselves or distinguishing themselves from a lot of the other competition that they have out there. And I'm looking forward to really kind of diving into, I guess, because you are very different than your standard entrepreneur in the sense of your hands have been in so many different cookie jars, and they're very unique, and it's not your standard CEO of a business. You've started out in a zoo. So tell me a little bit about, how did you get to where you are, and what was kind of the mindset that you had to be able
Sure.
to take so many businesses and be so successful?
Well, most people, when you're successful, people, I don't know if it's a jealousy or I wish I could do that, always will say, well, you were lucky. And really, if you think about luck, a person would say they were lucky to win the lottery, but they had to take action to buy a ticket before they won, right?
Right.
So I always talk about daring to dream and daring to act. I grew up on the farm. I was always encouraged by my parents. They were really good about, I'd come up with a crazy idea, and they used to call me ornery. Then they called me creative as I got into high school and college. But I was going to be a math major, and all of a sudden, a guy told me I could go over here and make a living by talking. That sounds pretty good. So I got into radio and television. So I started in this cable television before cable was cool, and there was some luck there. Although I took the action to do something, all my buddies were going to broadcast television, either directors or on-camera talent. And this company was just getting started, and I realized when a company has a product that people want, because the broadcasters are all saying nobody will ever pay $6 for cable television, guaranteed.
Can you
Well,
imagine if
we
they had
start
known how
selling it.
much people are paying now for just one
Now it's
network,
what?
huh?
Yeah, $100 we're paying today or whatever for all these networks. So I learned how to sell in adverse situations and handling objections, all that sort of thing. But I also learned about failure because I realized that failure is kind of the first step to success. And almost everything we touched turned to gold, but we had quite a few failures. And I had one personal failure at the time. I was doing on-camera TV for this cable television. We were playing bingo on TV. Crazy, but it seemed like people would watch. And I looked up, realized I didn't have a 5 o'clock shadow. So I thought, I'm going to write Schick and tell them how much I love their razor. And so I sat down, wrote a letter, sent it off to New York, thinking I'm going to be on national television. So I had my first dream, something that I thought might be fun. Probably like when you play the Powerball, you're thinking, what if I win?
Yeah,
I'm
right.
thinking, what happens if I get this gig? 2 weeks to the day, I got it back. And it said, Dear Mr. Rich, we like that you are satisfied with your razor, but you wrote the wrong company. Gillette makes that razor. Well, what I realized was you got to do your homework if you're going to do anything. I failed, but I had this in my mind from there on out that I'd love to be on national television. So I always had that goal in the back of my mind. And
That's
by the time
funny.
it got all done, I got to be on all major networks, all the cable networks, as guests of various things. And even today's podcast are all came out of that failure that I had. Well, we got to try a lot of things in cable television, networks that worked and failed, all that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, but when I was 29 years of age, I tried something that should have failed, but by chance it didn't. I acted upon an idea. I got a call from my hometown. They said, "We're going to have a centennial. We don't know whether they're 100 years old. We're going to have a party." There were 50 people in this little hometown, this little farm town. So I said, "I'll help you." And they said, "Well, you're our most famous person." I thought, whoa, we better adopt somebody. So we created all these ideas, and it came down to let's adopt a celebrity for one day. So I sat down and I wrote a press release and said, we want to adopt somebody for a day, and we'll give you a free oil and lube at the local garage. We're going to give you a free cemetery plot. We didn't have a lot to give away.
Cemetery
But
plot sounds pretty enticing.
yeah, you got a place to lay down. So I hit print, and instead of printing one, I printed 44 letters. I sent them all out that night. And you know what? I failed 43 of the 44 times. 43 of the letters got no response. But the one that did was from someplace called United Press International. They said, we think this is a funny story. We'd like to put it on the national wires. Well, they did. And it ended up on Johnny Carson, the Tonight Show's desk. And lo and behold, they called and said, we'd like to do something. In fact, we're
Wow.
talking about doing a satellite uplink to actually do the show with split screen with you guys in Cooper and us in LA. Well, they came out, they checked it all out. They said, we'll guarantee you front cover of Time, Newsweek, all that. Well, they couldn't get all the technical things worked out, but they called us out and we got to go out and be on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. First 20 minutes, 2 commercial breaks, paid us union talent fees, our own dressing room. And lo and behold, we got to promote Cooper, Iowa to 20 million homes across the United States. Big audience that
Oh
night.
man.
But that's not the moral of the story. Because you were asking about how do you switch from this to that, and this was completely different. This wasn't cable television. This wasn't my job. I was just trying to help somebody else and create a new idea that might get them some publicity. So about a year later, I'm working at the cable television company in the marketing department for the corporate headquarters. And I started thinking, I've been doing these HBO free previews where we would show you HBO and you'd say, oh my God, Marge, we got HBO. And then as soon as the movie was over, we'd come on and say, hey, now's the time to call, kind of like Home Shopping Network in between the movies. And we get people to call. But I was traveling from town to town to town to do these. And I remembered the idea that I had failed on about satellite uplink. I'd have never thought of this idea if I hadn't failed 43 of the 44 times. And that idea was they could theoretically do a satellite uplink across the nation from Iowa. So I called my buddy at HBO. He said, I don't think so, but I'll call so-and-so who called so-and-so who called so-and-so. Ultimately, we got the head of technical at HBO, and they said, sure, we have a truck with satellite uplink. We'll bring it out. So for the first time in Iowa, we uplinked an HBO free preview across all of the cable systems across the United States and sold $15 million worth of HBO.
Wow.
You know what?
Wow.
We would never done that if I had not failed 43 of the 44 times. So that kind of shot my career to the next level. But then at age 40, the Bass brothers took a run at our stock. We were a public company, and lo and behold, we were going to cash out. So we did a leverage buyout, and we all cashed out. And all of a sudden, I'm in one of these Google deals where I got all the money I ever thought I would coming off the farm. My God, this is a lot of money. And I had traveled the U.S. It was unbelievable. What do I do next? So I decided to start my own company. So by chance, I started a company that did these free previews, and we started doing them for ESPN for all the pay-per-view fights, the Disney Channel for their channel. We did all this, and for 10 years, we traveled the country and did all of these really fun
That's
events.
awesome.
And then at age 50, as I mentioned, midlife crisis, I don't know what it was, but I decided to get off the road, and that's when the opportunity at the zoo came up.
I'm still perplexed. I mean, what year was that when you did the satellite across all the entire nation?
It would have been 1981 when I was on Carson, and we started doing all the satellite uplinks between 1990 and the year 2000. And and of course, taking that idea. And here's what I learned when it was all said and done. You're from California, right?
Yes, sir.
So in California, you've got this place called Napa Valley.
Yep.
And I try to learn something new every day. If I try to improve something every day, I think of where could I make everybody's got $1 million idea. They just don't act on it. You got the idea, you got it. Well, when I drive to the grocery store, I try to figure out how do I beat that time by another second. I'm always trying to figure out how do I do something just a little bit different to make it work. And so I've always had all these crazy ideas. The Carson show was one of the craziest. I met with Bob Hope to try to do a Bob Hope special for the Iowa caucuses when they first elected president. We had these Iowa caucuses. He almost did a show live from here. All these, it was just something that no one else has done. I want to do something different and unique. But as you get into all of that, I'm in Napa Valley and I'm thinking, well, they must, to win the best wine in the world, they must just go out back and get on their own vines and do it. And I realized, no, the people that put together the wine go all across the valley, and there's different minerals and different temperatures and all of these things that affect what grapes are. And they get this big bushel basket and they put all of these different grapes in the basket. And that's really the lesson I learned was when you're trying to come up with that $1 million idea and you bring people around to brainstorm, you want as many diverse and different ideas. In today's society, we are so diverse, and we've got to have diversity in our idea and thoughts. I mean, I could sell banana ice cream to people like banana ice cream, but if I'm going to open an ice cream shop, I want as diverse a menu as I can because I want to serve a lot of people. I just don't want to serve this 100. I want to serve these thousands or these millions as I'm coming up in all that. So the idea came up, dare to dream, which means anytime you're trying to come up with an idea, you don't have judgment. You don't think about it. In fact, let me show you why people judge and how people fail. Two things. One, when we sent people to the moon, 3 guys to the moon, and they said 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, in our own, if you're a young entrepreneurial company, and you're coming up with ideas, many are project managers. This is the date this happens. This is how this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is when I'm going to make this much money and cash flow the business, all that sort of thing. Well, NASA couldn't do that because they said 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They'd planned for years to send them to the moon. They'd blast off, but they course corrected over 90% of the time. They were off course over 90%. They are failing all the time, but they reconstructed and they redid it. And that told me that daring to dream means you get this big bushel basket of all these very unique and diverse ideas with no judgment. And then you prioritize with all of your groups, because that's where I call them the no mans come in. People who say, no man, that'll never work. Getting the ideas, you want no judgment. Oh, okay, let me give you an example. I'm going to show you when I'm saying, I think we ought to paint the wall purple. Somebody's going to say, no, man, we can't do that. We've tried that. It doesn't work. I mean, that's what happens in most creative sessions. But here's why you want to accept every idea, no matter what. Every idea is a good idea, and you're writing down every idea. Just quickly, a little quiz here. What color is a stop sign?
Red.
What color is a yield sign?
Yellow.
Since 1971, every yield sign in the United States is white and red, but everybody says yellow. We all have preconceived ideas as we are thinking and creating new things.
So
you're giving me that look. You're going to Google
no,
it.
I'm giving you the look because I'm trying to understand where in my brain I'm associating yield with yellow, and I'm thinking maybe it's it's a traffic light instead, right? The yield, the yellow.
Everybody does. Yeah, no passing zones are yellow, but yield signs are white and red. So what it tells me, and what I would tell everybody after I learned this little trick from the vineyards, is that you want to get all the ideas, and every idea is a good idea. You can't have judgment when you're doing brainstorming. Okay. When you're doing brainstorming, take about 10 minutes. Don't do more than that. Just say, let's get a quick 50 ideas and let people go nuts. Some will sound dirty, some will sound crazy, but you can't have people going, no. Or, well, everything's a good idea, and you try to build on it. You want a yellow wall? How about purple dots on that yellow wall? How about having fluorescent lights on that when it's all said and done? Just keep building and building and building. And then you walk away, and then you take the second step, which is daring to act. And in that, you have your entire group get together, and now the accountant can say, because usually in a brainstorming session, the accountant's first, we can't do that. No, man, that's too expensive. Or or the compliance or the legal folks say, you're going to get sued. We can't do that.
Right.
So now everybody gets their input and you prioritize what you think will work best and where make the most money. And now you have a priority list that your entire team can get together and they'll all support because you together worked it out versus what most people do is a brainstorming session and everybody's knocking things down and up before you get started, especially looking at the boss as soon as someone says, I want a purple wall. And they look at the boss and think, God, that's kind of crazy. Rather than say, yeah, and how about this? How about that? And the boss has to be behind all that.
Right.
Those are some rules of creating an innovative environment to get the ideas down. And then the second step is taking action by getting together and prioritizing what the top ones are. And then you've got one to act on.
So that sounds really, I mean, for me, it sounds really great when it comes to having already put, you've got your business going and you're coming up with new ideas. When first starting a company or when first starting an idea, how do you know you have enough ideas and when do you start to actually take action on those ideas and rather say, well, let's come up with 5 more? How do you know you have something solid to start with?
I think most entrepreneurs have the one idea they're really good at and that they really think they'll work at. Maybe they're an expert in this. For me, I was in cable television and I had already come up with the one idea. I just took it and enlarged that to all the other companies. Once our company sold and I started my own company. So I think that's the big thing is trying to get people around. The other is I always suggest when a new entrepreneurial company starts is to have an advisory board. You don't have to pay board members, but you need someone good. And think of the things you can't do very well. I'm not very good at accounting. I'm awful at details. Also at legal, I have no idea on legal. So you try to get an advisory team to help you out. Ultimately, you may have to pay them, but they're the ones with a little devil on your shoulder. But you want to be the one to try anything and anywhere when you're an entrepreneur. And I think once you become successful and you start making some money, that's when it's the second idea that is usually the bigger one. You want to find something you do. And I tell people, if you're working right now, keep working, work your idea out at night. If you got a new company business, do it at night and weekends. So you've got some cash flow coming in, because if you stop working and you spend all your money, you're broke. And if you got a family, that's not a good deal.
Right.
So way to, flush it out a little bit before you go on. And when you become really successful, all of a sudden, somewhere in these brainstorming sessions, someone comes up with a really big idea. Only use 10% or 20% of your money. Never ever gamble with all your money. I mean, if you're gambling, you're playing Powerball or you're playing at the slot machines. If you put in some money, $100, I can lose that. Boom, 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 I lost it. You got to walk away. You don't want to go reach in your pocket and get another $100. So I try to only gamble, even with all the success and the financial monies that I've had. I only gamble with what I know I'm going to lose. And I'd rather gamble on the next success, because it's so rewarding when you start a new company and it works, to start another one. You keep wanting to look and get that same buzz that happens when you do it.
So you have this concept of what you call idea dude. And this, for me, the framework that you've kind of just presented sounds very similar to this concept that you have. How did you come up with this concept and what does it mean to you?
I get this all the time. Well, I'm a talker, because in our talking, I may have 3 or 4 ideas. I'm kind of quietly writing them down or keeping note of those, because I like thinking up new stuff. I mean, I think it was Henry Ford who said, I can pay any kid 5 cents to go find what you're looking for in the library, or you can find it on Google Day. My job is to think up new ideas. So I love going into existing things and looking for ways to improve or to recreate it. And I think anybody who will listen to this podcast will say, geez, that was just kind of overwhelming. A guy just went all over the board. That's the style that I like and that I do, because I'm hoping that one little tidbit of what people hear, they're going to say, oh my God, I better write that one down. In fact, let me give you one. One of the things, remember how we're trying to get ideas, and with COVID, everybody's locked up and we had all these people at home by themselves.
Yep.
We started this at the lottery, and that's called COT. And the reason that we did it is because I was coming in saying, hey, can we get a lottery ticket with an animal on it? Can we paint it purple? Can we do this game, that game? And a few weeks later, the entire management staff came in and kind of said, we can't do it. I mean, you just see it, tears in their eyes. They said, this is overwhelming, because they want to please the boss. I always said that a king could say old poop and everybody heads to the restroom, because people want to please the person in command. So what I said,
I haven't heard that one before. That's funny.
So we sat down and talked. And I said, well, no, I didn't mean that you should do it. I just meant here's an idea. And so we came up with this concept that when we do an email to each other, or when we're talking face to face, remember the no judgment?
Yep.
If we have a crazy idea, just send it, but put there are three things you can put in the byline. Either action required. If I put action required, I'm the boss. Yeah, it could be job changing. You better do it. FYI means this is free information. You should read it sometime. You know about this because we may discuss this down the road. But the one used the most is COT, which means consider or throw away. Now, there are rules when you use this. You want to tell all the people you're going to do this with. Number one, if I say COT or COT, I'm talking to you, that means I don't want any reaction. Oh, no, I don't want to have a reply back from you on an email of, oh, that's a good idea, even if it's to encourage me. No, I don't want any. I just want to get it off my chest. And you have it now to write. If you want to write it down, great. If you want to throw it away, that's fine. If you're in the middle of a project. But what that did was create the dynamic of knowing whether the boss is saying, I want this done, or whether I'm just trying to give ideas. And what we found it did was then all the employees started sending me ideas, knowing, and then I don't have to reply to them because I don't want to make anybody mad that I didn't like their idea or did. But they got it to me, where before, if they had an idea, they'd be afraid to give it to me unless they had flushed it out or done everything. And so we were missing ideas. And it ultimately went all the way down. So the receptionist, who maybe saw that the chair was breaking in the front and people were upset about something, but they're afraid to pass it on. Well, maybe they would write it down anonymously on the suggestion box downstairs, put it in there. But what happens? That idea then sits there for a few days until somebody picks it up. Then they have to decide who it goes to, and then it gets to someone, and they don't want to make the receptionist mad. Receptionist took a long time anyway because they didn't want the boss to think they were stupid by offering this idea. And it sat around. In the meantime, the receptionist would be downstairs saying, you know what, I put in an idea at the suggestion box. Never heard about it.
Right.
Never heard about it. So this way, everybody's communicating back and forth by giving an idea with those three simple letters: COT, consider or throw away.
I love that. That's something that I think we should be implementing in. I'm going to try to implement that in our marketing meetings. It sounds like the three tiers allow you to really prioritize what's important and what's simply an idea. And the no reaction is probably, from what I've hear, it could be probably the most important part of it. Just taking it for face value and running with it and seeing if it's something that do we even want to bring up in the future is something that I'm going to take that. I'm going to run with that, Terry. I appreciate that. I think that's some pretty easy and simple kind of guidelines and framework that you can implement to your business immediately for anybody who
absolutely
is working as a startup in any business.
The people who are, when you're coming up with ideas, I'm always thinking of different things. A lot of people have a pencil and paper by their bed, so that when you wake up with something, you got to write it down. So all these ideas we're talking about, if you like something, you just jot it down, put it in a file somewhere, because if you don't write it down, you'll forget it. Just the same way I do at night. If I wake up and think, oh my God, how about this? I better get this done, and I write it down. So, those are all important steps. The other thing is, as a boss, when you come in, when I came into the lottery, I'd walk up to the building. I'd think, oh my God, I'm in charge of a $450 million deal. And I don't know, I know a lot of CEOs. Every one of the CEOs that I know are scared, I don't want to say the word a lot, when they go up to the door thinking, I'm in charge, what do I do today? But the successful ones will walk in the door with confidence, and they'll say, here it is, and they'll make a decision. And when they make that decision, you'll be amazed how employees can make a project successful that the boss, I didn't think, might not work. I like the idea. But when you gave it to them and then they found ways, you got that interaction, you got that diversity of thought, they could make it successful. Many ideas that I never thought would work, and lo and behold, they did.
So do you think an idea dude it can be the CEO of a company, or do idea dudes normally bring the ideas to the head honchos?
I think some of the best idea dudes are the people you'd never expect. I mentioned the receptionist. Who knows the customers better than the people on the front line, right?
Nobody.
So it's giving them the tools and the okay to give ideas without any negative comment back, or even positive of we're going to do it because you gave it to us. It's just that you can get the ideas and learn from people who are out there on the line seeing what customers want. So I think everybody can be an idea dude. I think the key to success on that is probably an encouragement that I got from my dad and from the bosses at the cable company when I first started, that I could say just about and do about whatever I wanted to do. And they'd say, well, yeah, how about this? How about that? Yeah. Okay. And the encouragement is the big thing of trying to find ways. And my dad would always laugh. And then he'd ask me, now, what was that again? And I'd say it again. He'd say, well, try it. Let's see what happens. See how I can help you.
So, in all of your years of experience and having worked so many different businesses, what do you think is the foundation of being a good entrepreneur?
I think the foundation is, let me think about that for a second. No doubt, doing something that you like to do, the passion, because the passion will take you a long ways. Surrounding yourself with experience you don't have. Take as few partners as you can financially that you are obliged to pay at some point. Because anytime you take on a financial partner or somebody who's going to back you, they want input. But have non-paid or people you're paying to give you advice, like an accountant and a lawyer, around to help you succeed in the areas that you're least vulnerable. And as companies get really, really big, the Elon Musk's, all the others, I think they've surrounded themselves more. They aren't always the best managers. I'm not sure I'm a really good manager. I'm a good idea and saying, let's do it, and encouraging you and finding ways to make it work. But you need, as you get bigger and bigger, to hire the right people who are good people, HR people, to handle all the, whatever, because you can hire the best employee and somebody's got a problem of some sort 5 years from now. So, I think that's probably my answer.
Fair enough. I want to talk a little bit about managing or being the CEO of a zoo. How different is that from being the CEO of another, maybe a business that has some kind of software or some tangible item? Is there much of a difference?
I guess I don't know. I kind of had the same attitude you did when they called me. It was an ex-governor who said, we're going to take this over as a nonprofit because the cities, they were losing $600,000. And would you be interested? And I thought, well, I grew up on a farm. A giraffe can't be much different than a cow. So, I jumped into it. They were losing $600,000 and we did the same thing. And, we had a lot of people who said, this is never going to work. You need $2 million for every exhibit you had. You're not going to be able to. And, you just look and assess where are the problems. You basically knew everybody from 2 to 9 would go to the zoo. You go once when you're a kid, once when you take your kid, once when you take your grandkid. But how do we get them there 2 or 3 times in a given year? How do we put that all together? And one of the things we did was just assess, how do we get a new demographic in? Because we had all the kids in, and we thought, what do millennials want at that point? The 21 to 28 in the time that I was there. And we thought, well, booze. They don't want any kids there, and they like to drink. So we hired a band, kept the exhibits open, and sold booze. And lo and behold, we cash flowed the zoo in within 6 to 8 months.
Who would have thought it was that simple?
$250,000 in alcohol. It's fun. We had a Barry Manilow night, and then we told everybody if you're trying to get pregnant, a couple who has no kids, come on out. Perfect, because we have a couple of zebras who are trying to get breed, and they're in heat. So come watch them breed, and we'll play Barry Manilow music, and who knows, the luck might work. We just went completely different than the Mickey Mouse feeling. And I knew it would work because even if you go to Disney World, you take the kids, you don't see any dirty words or anything there, but you go to Pleasure Island at night and it's a crazy place. And so that's kind of the theory we had. The other thing was trying to find something is to look for things that we could use that we had free. So we didn't have to pay $2 million for an exhibit. And so we kind of thought, what do we have that's free in the zoo? Let's look around here. Animal poop. All the animals poop. So we brought in an exhibit called Scoop on Poop, so we could exhibit, so kids could come in and giggle at what elephant poop looked like versus zebra poop versus deer poop versus all these different cat. And it was hilarious, and everybody loved it. But on top of that, we started thinking, or I had heard this earlier, that the tiger poop, Siberian tiger poop, was a great deterrent for deer. We have a lot of white-tailed deer. Now, a Siberian tiger has never seen a deer, but it's just predator prey deal.
Hmm.
So we started packaging up the tiger poop and selling it and put it in gallon buckets for $20. And we told people, hey, this might keep the deer away from your flowers and eating your plants. Lo and behold, we sold $20,000 worth of tiger poop that
It's
summer.
also a good fertilizer.
So
You can mix it in with your dirt, and there you go.
there, it stunk though. Man, did it stink.
I
But
bet.
anyway, you know, those are crazy ideas that we did as a group, and we opened up so that the zookeepers could also know that if we made money, they didn't want the animals out at night, but if we made money, they got more things for enrichment of the animals to bring those animals and keeping endangered species alive. So I knew nothing about endangered species and managing a zoo that way. I did know the basic business plan of, they were charging 4.95, is run by the city, so you got to keep it low price
Right.
for low income. We raised it right away to 9.95. You pay for what you get. It must not be worth much. It was 4.95, so we
Right.
raised it to
Right.
9.95, and then I gave away a ton of free tickets to all the inner city kids and families. And so people coming in from Omaha or whatever, that were used to paying $29.95, we were a cheap deal, and we designed it so it's a much different than most big zoos. And lo and behold, it was so easy to cash flow. And then we raised another $15 million in endowment so that just the interest off of it will pay for the operations for years to come, including when COVID hit. So that made it successful as the second largest cultural attraction in the state by the time we were done. All because we did this whole lots of ideas, and then as a committee, as all the employees got together, then we shot them down. No judgment to begin with. Tell us what's the craziest thing we could do.
I am amazed at the different types of ideas that one would never even think of taking poop and making that a feasible way of attracting people to a zoo. And it seems to
That
me. Go ahead. Sorry.
Now, before we go any further,
Uh
I've got to
huh.
tell you, remember I told you about fairs, and I do speeches. I do a lot of
Yep.
speeches.
Yep.
And
Yep.
usually I'll have somebody 21 to 30 come up to me and say, yeah, I enjoy the speech, but you've had all this success. Haven't you ever screwed up? Haven't you ever failed? So I tell
Mhm.
the chick story, but I'll tell you another. When the zoo was going strong, there's another attraction called the Botanical Center, and they had a board, and they called me and said, would you come in and talk and give us some ideas?
Mhm.
Hell yes, why not? So I went to their meeting. I knew everybody around the table. We had 6 or 8 people, but one of them I didn't know. But I don't care. As you can tell, I like to talk, so I just kept throwing ideas. How about this? How about that? I didn't realize the person sitting right over there was the Des Moines Register editorial writer. Now, the person who writes the big editorial on Sunday.
Okay.
So this is a Friday. On Sunday, this great big editorial that usually if you get your name in it, you're going to be fired if you're a public official at all. And the headline was, what do we do to save the Botanical Center? What does a big thinker think? And the first headline was, grow a marijuana display, or get a big Venus flytrap big enough to suck down a cow. And the other one was maybe have cancer patients come in because breast cancer patients for therapeutic, because the dome does look like a breast. I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? Well, you know what? I failed. They didn't take a single one of my ideas, but they laughed so hard and thought it was such a unique deal that it made the paper and I didn't get fired. That why don't we try something different? They had their own brainstorming session, build a brand new botanical center. It's absolutely gorgeous here in Des Moines. So that's the encouragement I really like doing when I go out and speaking. And I was just at the Tennessee Bankers this last week and did their annual conference on idea generation. And it's fun to see people like IT people who don't, they're creative because they think they can come up with this new program or whatever, but thinking about in general with the company, how does that integrate with that to make us more successful? That's pretty rewarding.
Ideas seem to kind of flock around you. Whether it's yourself or you're able to bring it out of somebody else. What do you think is I guess, the characteristic that you have that helps cultivate ideas and thoughts? I know that we've spoken about the framework
Yep.
of not reacting and the three priorities, but what is it about you that you think other people can maybe take that characteristic and really implement it into their own day to day to help cultivate ideas?
You try to find what trips people triggered. You'll notice I'll usually, when people are talking, I'll listen and you'll see me agreeing, although you're not supposed to have judgment. I will be encouraging as my father was when I came up with crazy ideas. And maybe another kind of different or crazy thought. I had a marketing, when I went to the lottery. I needed a marketing VP, And the person I had, I knew was real aggressive. She was just, I knew would I get along with her, that sort of thing, but I knew she had great ideas. So when I called her in, my idea to her was, hey, look, I love marketing, I love promotion, and I'm here. But I'll tell you what, you see the number there? That's the number. And if you're above that number in sales in any given month, you will never see me in any meeting. You can make all the decisions. And you know what? In 10 years, I never went to a meeting.
Wow.
We beat it every time. It part of it is just the encouragement. I mean, I think that nobody likes negative people. Nobody likes to be told, and everybody's worried when they say something
Hmm.
that's a new idea that what's mom and dad going to think,
Yeah.
or what's somebody going to say. So I always test it. Like I said, I don't know if I said damn or hell a little bit ago. I kind of tested that to see if you could laugh or not. I wouldn't use the F word after that if you had. If you looked worried, you just kind of you play the audience. But in general, it's just being nice and encouraging. And if somebody's really got, this isn't just in revenue, it's also in expenses.
Okay.
Uh, I went to a speech in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I looked on the back of the toilet seat, and there was a box, and in that box there was a hole, and it said "waste exfoliating body cleanser." Thinking on the back of the toilet, what is this all about? And then I realized it was the accountants. You say, can accountants be creative? They looked at a bar of soap and thought, when you go to a hotel, even if you're there a couple, 3 nights, you only use about that much of the outside of the soap, right? So let's take out the middle of the soap and let's put it on the sink. And then we only have to buy one bar of soap for every room rather than two.
Huh.
That's creative. 50% reduction in soap costs.
Huh. Um, has there ever been an idea where you have thought there's no way this works and you were just totally surprised by it actually working?
But the satellite uplink free previews for HBO is probably the one that I'm always amazed at how well it did work and what we learned in that. Um, I mean, we've gone through quite a bit with the zoo, the lottery. They told me that the lottery would never move. We did a 50% increase in profits in the 10 years I was there. Just basic blocking and tackling, trying new things that people didn't think would work. And we just found a different way to do it. So uh, I'm trying to think if there's one thing. I guess having a family and
Oh,
it still amazes me that having a family of 3 kids, they've got grandkids and they all live around here. I see them every week.
that's beautiful.
Few people don't get that, so they're probably personal satisfaction things that also are that way. I think whenever people just like listening to this podcast, they'll learn, hopefully take one thing away from it. A few months ago, Damon John from Shark Tank, and
Hmm.
I did a teleconference like this, and he did something that just blew me away. And he's successful. He's got all these people telling him $1 million ideas that he can consider. He says he's got a list every night before he goes to bed. He looks at that list, and he's got about 6 things on it, adds, subtracts, and then when he wakes up, he does the same thing. I said, "Oh, that's cool. You mean you have that many $1 million ideas?" He said, "No." He said, "I finally learned after being successful, the other success you got to figure out is the success of how to be happy yourself." He said,
Mm.
"Those are 5 things I'm going to do for myself. Might be I'm going to have pancake and eggs in the morning that I never have because of my cholesterol or whatever, and I'm going to try those. Or it might be, I'm going to say goodbye to my wife and give her a kiss or whatever, things that would make him happy." And I thought, that's just pretty darn cool. And so I'm always looking for things that make it. There was another night. I was at a deal just recently. So, this isn't happening when I'm 20 or 30 trying to learn all this stuff. This is happening as I'm out doing speeches now. Uh, they've got the good life. It's stick men on a T-shirt, and the company just was exploding in
Okay.
the teens, 2010, whenever. And I heard them speak, and they said that they were having meetings with all these young, uh, new business people, and everybody'd come and say, "Yeah, I have to go to this." They keep hearing, "I have to go to this meeting. I have to get this project done. I have to do this, I have to do that." And so they got together and decided, just like we did with the COT idea, we are banning the word have in this company. We're going to change it to get. So I get to go to this meeting. I get to do this project. And what everybody realized was, I get to go to the meeting because I'm being paid and they respect my opinion as I do that. They said the entire company changed from negative to positive. I thought, wow,
Wow, that's
those are two
impressive.
great. Not my ideas. I ain't making any money on them, but that's the ideas.
We did that with the word but. We're not allowed to. Not that we're not allowed to, but it's discouraged to use the word "but." So if someone
Yeah.
gives you some kind of feedback or whatever the case is, you did a great job, but we've been told we want to stick away, and that did make a pretty
Yeah.
big change in the way that our meetings and our conversations with our team members go, because there is no contradiction anymore, because the word "but" is, yeah, you did a great job, but it failed, right? And that's been a interesting change in, I guess, dynamic in our environment as well. So I like the from
Perfect.
have to get. That's pretty cool too.
Well, you just gave me my next idea as I'm talking to somebody else. I mean, that's how we get them and how you build successful ideas to be able to do something. I had an idea back when I was producing television shows that I was doing work for hire, so I do an HBO free preview.
Hmm.
They'd send me a check. I didn't own anything. Well, I wanted to do a TV show, and I looked around and thought, what's the number one show on cable television? World Wrestling Federation. So what other
Wow.
sport is like that, where professional sports, they don't make any money after they get out of college? And I thought, soccer. Back then in the 90s, nobody was being paid anything as professional. So I started the World Championship Soccer League, full contact indoor soccer. I hired stuntmen to
What?
do all the fights. The coaches got to be messing around with the other player's wife, and all of these drama things that happened. We produced 4 shows, got on Fox Sports World, and the soccer people hated it, but the college kids loved it. But I got back into doing HBO free previews, which cost a lot less. I forgot all about it. So my moral of the story is it was a failure. But a year ago, the athletic.com, a big sports website, did a 27-page feature on Soccer Slam, Soccer, and how it was made. And all of a sudden, we get this big groundswell of people coming in. And I get a call from the producers. I want to do a documentary on it. So I think this
Wow.
documentary will be out in the next year, especially with the World Cup this year. It's going to be a kind of a fun deal. But Soccer Slam, if that was revised, The Rock just paid 15 million for the NFL or the XFL, which was bankrupt.
Did
We
he?
still have all the rights to Soccer Slam. Who knows what might
All
happen from
right.
there? But that's just the point that you want to try to find things that you can call your own and then look for ways, but do it with monies that you can risk and that you can lose.
I want to hear about this lottery fraud a little bit more. I wanted to see if is there parallel between the creative and how you came about catching this lottery fraud.
Yeah, I love promotions. I love marketing. I love to just be crazy and everything. But as a CEO of a $450 million deal, you got to look a little serious when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, someone won this lottery, but it doesn't feel right.
Uh huh.
Something's screwy."
Uh huh.
And what we found was it was a vendor who provided the machines to draw these numbers for an organization that drew the smaller games like Powerball, only a smaller game. This is called Hot Lotto,
Okay.
and about 15 states were doing this game, and lo and behold, somebody won. But they wouldn't tell us who bought the ticket. So it felt kind of screwy. So we started investigating, and then they lied to us. So then we could get in our attorney general and the Department of Criminal Investigation. When it's all said and done, it took almost 7 years. We found out it was a vendor, the guy who wrote the program, compiled the program, managed the box, set it up so that 3 times a year, just 3 different dates only, he could predict the numbers down to 200 combinations. So it's a really complicated in the code for what it could be, and was really tough to find, and no one found it. So he had picked up 2 or 3 jackpots, and lo and behold, we busted it and ultimately sent him to prison for 25 years. And his
Wow.
best buddy, who was cashing it, got some time, as did his brother, when it was all said and done. And it was such a complicated case. And I was having a lot of fun with it. We were on TV talking about it all the time. And then all of a sudden, when it became we charged somebody and we're going to mess with somebody's life and we better be right, it got pretty serious pretty fast. And it got to the point that, even 2 hot dogs, his brother got on the stand and said, that can't be my brother because he don't eat hot dogs. That got on because it was just a little Iowa fraud at the time. The Associated Press or UPI picked it up and put it out on the national site, and an FBI agent said, wait a minute, the brother we investigated him for winning one jackpot in Colorado, which was on one of this guy's computers.
So you must have done it here
So
too.
then we got them, but here are the lessons. If you're ever
Wow.
going to do any fraud, which you shouldn't, one, don't do anything on social media, don't do anything on your cell phone, because that's the first place the cops go. And we took all of their contacts and then compared those against any winners that we had, and we immediately started finding winners. So it became pretty darn obvious when it's all said and done of that. And what I learned for entrepreneurs and new businesses, what you learn in fraud, how do you prevent fraud? Number one, make sure you have checks and balances. Don't let
Mm-hmm.
one person write the checks and the purchase orders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Be sure, as a president, you take the time to look as the owner, you look at the books and you do that. And you have an auditor come in, because even if you hire your brother-in-law, sister-in-law, whoever, may be the greatest employees, but at some point they might have a divorce, they might have a gambling problem, a drinking problem. There are all sorts of things that drive people over the line, and that's the first. Financial need is the first step. The second one is opportunity. So if they're writing both the PO and the deal, and nobody's overseeing that, checks and balances, then they have the ability to do it without anybody following up on it. And the final piece in that, according to the Certified Fraud Examiners of America, is the rationale. What point, even if you're the only sole proprietor and you're the one doing the checks yourself and that sort of thing, you have the opportunity. Everybody has some financial need, but that's usually when you've got the divorce or whatever, that you need more money to try to do fraud. But the last one is rationalization. At what point do you say, I deserve it? And usually in a small
Ah.
organization with new ones, it's because you're working that employee too hard. Their neighbor's making more money than they are, and they think they're just as valuable as that neighbor. There's all these things that go along with that. So those are the three things, when combined, unchecked, will open up people right for fraud.
Hmm. It's a topic we didn't spend a whole lot of time on. It sounds like you're very involved in fraud. And is this something that you advise companies on?
Well, that's one of the speeches I do, and I tell the story of the Eddie Tipton, because this is exactly how and what he did. He was making good money, but his brother got in financial problem, wanted some money, and he was working hard, and he thought that nobody appreciates him, so let's see if I can rig this lottery. I mean, he was in charge of Powerball too, but he hadn't figured out how to rig Powerball yet before we caught him.
Wow.
And he was also, his rationale was, I'm working too hard and I deserve some of this money when it's all said and done. So yeah, I speak to companies, because I start off with, I don't want anybody to ever go through what we went through. Sounds like fun. It isn't, because you're always worried that, what if I didn't, if we hadn't had the investigation go all the way to where they confessed and got convicted, everybody, my counterparts, would all be saying, hey, you're messing with all of our money too, the reputation of lotteries. And I got vindication that we were correct,
That's amazing.
because it just didn't feel right.
That's amazing. Um, Terry, you have two books that you've written that we haven't really spent time talking about much. What was the inspirations for the first book, and how did that kind of drive you to deciding that there was two books that you wanted to write on? What was the inspiration behind those?
Pretty simple. My agent said you can make a lot more money in speeches if you write a book.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a book. I had somebody help me write it, do the research and that sort of thing, but it was a lot in my voice. And both of those were because I was doing the public speaking, and you could make more money if you write the book. I wasn't looking to make $1 million on the books themselves, but I found that it was kind of therapeutic, and also it will be a really good legacy if my kids and grandkids down the road wonder what Grandpa did. And what he did in life. The Daring to Dream, Dare to Act has all of the stories that I told you, plus the lottery fraud has how crazy it was that we decided to hold to our guns and take it all the way, rather than just give up on it because it was a complicated case.
Well, they should be very proud of their grandfather for all that he's accomplished and all the people that he's going to be helping. The knowledge that you
Well,
bring and the experience that you have seems to be one in a billion. So, um, you know,
I
uh,
don't know. That's the point. I mean, if I learned this from Ted Turner.
okay.
Ted Turner came in halfway through his career, and he looked down. He was doing a speech for our chamber, and I said, "What's up, Ted?" And he said, "Well," I just found out I was worth $500 million, which back then was a lot of money. And he said, I'm still seeing 2 therapists every week. And I'm thinking, gosh, if this guy has these kind of problems, if he can do it, why can't I?
Yep.
And that's the point here. These stories are not meant to brag or to say anything except to say, look, everybody has $1 million idea. You're daring to dream them. You put them all together, and then you
Dare to
prioritize.
act.
And then
Yeah.
if you don't act, you're not going to get anything done. I mean, you can be creative, but until you actually innovate, you're not going to make any money.
Well, I think those are amazing words to recap this conversation. And, really, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I've got my 2 actions from this, and I'm going to start to implement those in our coming up meeting. I think after this, I have my team meeting. So those are going to be 2 things I'm going to implement: the 3 priorities, as well as the I get to rather than have to be. There was a lot. There really was a lot, and I hope people spend the time to really dissect what you said, because I think there was a tremendous amount of actionable information in what you provided, and that's always, mindset wise, that's always what we're looking to feed to people. So Terry, thank you so much for your time, and keep kicking ass and doing what you do. It sounds amazing.
I'll do that. And when people ask me, well, if I was 21 again, what would I do? What would I suggest to
Okay.
someone? One is always raise your hand. Someone says a toilet needs to be cleaned. No one raised their hand. Go do it, because you'll be noticed. So always volunteer for anything and everything that no one else wants to do. And the second is, which I have not done a good job on, I wish I did, was learning how to relax. Because once you taste success, it's like cocaine, I guess. I've never done cocaine, but it's like cocaine in that you want more and more, and you don't take the time to appreciate what you have and what you've done. So those would be my final 2 parting words, and I really appreciate you, Daniel, for doing this, and good luck with all your success.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you, and we'll see you guys on the next Mindset podcast. Take care.